The envelope lands on the kitchen table at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning, and Lisa Stone's hands go completely still. Not because she is afraid. She has been afraid before. She knows what fear feels like, knows it in the body, in the specific way it moves through the chest and up into the throat and makes your breathing go shallow and fast. This is not that. This is something different, something heavier, something that sits lower in the chest and doesn't move the way fear moves. Fear is quick, it runs. Whatever this is, it has roots. She looks at the photograph inside the envelope. A restaurant, a table, a man in a charcoal suit sitting with his back to the wall, and his eyes already moving toward the camera before whoever took the picture had finished pressing the button. A man who sees things before most people know there is anything to see. She has been in a room with that man. She has stood at his table with a notepad in her hand and looked at his face and understood, in some wordless and immediate way, that he was someone who noticed everything. She had not understood then that she was already part of what he was noticing. Beside the photograph, a single printed line. Words she reads 3 times because her mind keeps rejecting them. Flagged. Removed from proximity. Below it, a signature she recognizes, a signature she has watched being written on a check every week for the past month, in handwriting that is clean, deliberate, and unmistakably his. She would know it anywhere. She had spent more time than she intended to spend studying it, in the way you study things you are trying to convince yourself mean nothing. She sets the photograph down on the table with both palms flat on the surface, the way you set something down when you don't trust your hands. And that is where this story actually begins. Not in a restaurant, not in the park on a Sunday morning, not even in the moment he sat down for the first time and looked at her with those quiet, cataloguing eyes. It begins here, in a kitchen in Queens, with a photograph that is about to change everything. But to understand what it means, you have to go back 6 weeks. Before we go any further, if you're already hooked, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. Because this story is going to go places I promise you are not prepared for. Stay with me. Kai Seo has never forgotten a face in his life, not as a skill he practiced, not as a party trick he developed in some private school in Seoul to impress people who didn't need impressing, as something older than that, something his body decided it needed when he was still young enough that survival shouldn't have been the operating word for his situation. In his world, the world that exists several floors below the surface of the legal, the visible, the ordinary, a face forgotten is a threat untracked. A stranger not filed is a problem with no timestamp. He had begun keeping the catalogue young. At an age when other boys his age were memorizing sports statistics or song lyrics, he was memorizing faces. The delivery man who came twice a week instead of once. The woman on the corner who always looked away too quickly. The man at the school gate who was always there but never picked anyone up. Most of those memories turned out to be nothing. A few of them turned out to be something. That ratio, the small number of meaningful things hidden inside a large number of irrelevant ones, had trained him to treat everything as potentially significant, because the cost of missing the one that mattered was always higher than the cost of holding the ones that didn't. So when Kaiso walks into Harlow's, Manhattan's most private dining room on the 38th floor of a glass tower on the far edge of Tribeca, where the waitstaff are trained to speak in half volumes and the floral arrangements cost more than most people's car payments, his eyes do exactly what they always do. They move, slow, cataloguing, filing. The host by the entrance, Marcus, Mondays through Fridays, father of 2 in New Jersey, mortgaged 3 months ahead of schedule, proud of that. The bartender on duty, Jake, former Navy right-hand dominant, wears his wedding ring on his right hand because his wife did the same. 3 floor staff, a tall man named Derek, a woman named Priya, and a woman near the service corridor whose name tag he can't yet read. All stored, all filed, exactly where he needs them. He sits down, he doesn't open the menu, he hasn't needed to open a menu in 4 years. He orders by memory, by preference, by the specific and limited repertoire of a man who has decided that food is fuel, and time spent deliberating over it is time he will not get back. His second-in-command, Danny Rhee, slides into the seat across from him and is already talking before his jacket is fully off. The Nuka shipment, a name on a list that needs to come off that list before Friday. A situation near the Red Hook waterfront that has grown complications in the last 72 hours. Danny is the kind of man who processes information the way a river processes water, constantly, without apparent effort, already downstream by the time you've arrived at the last thing he said. Kai had found him at 22 and spent 11 years letting him talk. Kai listens. He always listens with his whole body, one ear for words, both eyes for everything else. His fingers rest flat on the white tablecloth. His face gives away less than a window in winter. A stranger watching from the bar would think he looked bored. That stranger would be deeply, dangerously wrong. And then it happens. A server steps out from behind the far side of the bar, navigating between table 9 and the service corridor, with the quiet efficiency of someone who has done this 1,000 times without once spilling a single drop of anything on anyone. Kai's eyes move over her the way they move over every person in every room. Automatic. Systematic. The same motion that has filed 14 faces in the last 4 minutes without his conscious involvement. And stall, not the way they stall on a threat, not the way they stall on a familiar face from a previous encounter that needs to be recatalogued and updated. The way a sentence stalls when a critical word goes missing from the middle of it. His mind reaches automatically, the way it always reaches, looking for the slot to file what it has just seen, and finds nothing, no slot available, no category that fits. The system reaches and comes back empty in a way it has genuinely never come back empty before. He blinks. His eyes return to Danny Ree, who is still talking about Red Hook, with the undisturbed continuity of a man who has not noticed anything unusual. And Kai says nothing, because he does not yet fully register what just happened. There is no framework for it. You cannot process a gap in a system that has never had one, but somewhere much quieter and much deeper. Something in him takes very careful note. Danny slides a folder across the table. Kai opens it without looking up. Numbers, timelines, names attached to amounts, attached to deadlines. All of it processed fluently, the way a musician reads sheet music, not translating so much as recognizing pattern to meaning, instant and automatic. She passes his table. He doesn't look up, but his pen slows, just slightly, for the length of 2 full heartbeats. 2 heartbeats in which the pen is touching paper but nothing is being written, because something in his body has redirected its attention without asking his permission. There is no scent he can name, not perfume, not product, just something warm and specific. The way a kitchen smells when someone has been baking since early morning, and the whole house has absorbed it without any single element being identifiable. His hand stays still 3 seconds longer than it should have. Across the table, Danny Ree notices. Danny always notices. This is why Kai keeps him. Danny notices everything that Kai doesn't think to look for, which is a short list, and an even shorter list now. But he says nothing, because 11 years working beside this man has taught him a very specific and very important lesson. When Kai Seo goes quiet inside his own stillness, it is not the time to speak. The meeting ends. They stand. Kai straightens his jacket. Dark navy, no tie. The kind of suit that communicates power by refusing to explain itself. He walks toward the exit with the even, measured stride of a man who owns every floor he crosses. He nods once at Jake behind the bar. And for the first time in 11 years of walking into rooms and walking out of them with every face stored, every name filed, every detail catalogued against future need, he steps into the elevator with one face missing. One face, out of a room containing 14 people. He stares at the elevator doors as they close. The brushed steel surface shows him a version of himself he barely recognizes. A man who is standing still and looking uncertain, which is not a thing Kai Seo is. The car pulls out into the slow, indifferent current of Manhattan at night. Danny's phone rings. Another call. Another problem somewhere in another borough needing to be handled before it grows edges. Kai handles all of it without blinking. Handles it with the same automatic competence he applies to everything. The problem gets solved. The call ends. The car moves through the city. But that night, for the first time in years, he lies in his penthouse apartment and cannot sleep. He stares up at the white expanse of a ceiling that cost more to paint than most people's entire apartments, and turns the problem over the way he turns every problem. Looking for the angle, the entry point, the thing that makes it solvable. The ceiling offers nothing. He has had long conversations with this ceiling before and it has never once been useful. But tonight he stares at it for a long time anyway. He tells himself it is the Red Hook situation. He tells himself he is tired. He tells himself he will go back to Harlow's tomorrow and look at the woman properly, and his mind will do what it always does, and she will be filed, and it will be done, and he will sleep. He almost believes it. What he doesn't know, in that quiet penthouse 16 floors above a city that would rather not know his name, is that 2 miles away, in a high-floor office in the financial district that smells of scotch and controlled ambition, a man named Preston Cole, Kai's cousin, blood by birth and rival by everything else, is sitting with Harlow's reservation logs on his screen, reading, thinking. Preston Cole has been thinking about Kai Seo for a long time. They had grown up in the same world, been shaped by the same forces, and arrived at the same city from different directions with different methods and overlapping ambitions. For 6 months, Preston had been losing ground in Boston. Not dramatically, not in a way that would register as catastrophic to anyone watching from the outside, but losing, quietly, steadily, in the specific way that things erode when the person who should be addressing them is looking somewhere else. And tonight, for the first time in months, the thinking has direction. Kai goes back to Harlow's the next evening. He tells Danny it is a reasonable venue. He tells himself it is habit. He is not convincing anyone, including himself, but the conversation is brief, and Danny has the professional wisdom to let it be brief. He orders the same water with the same slice of lemon and looks at the room with the same measured attention he brings to every room he enters. He is thorough. He is methodical. He checks the floor once, twice, and on the third pass his eyes find her. There she is, same side of the floor, moving between table 7 and the service station, with the same unhurried efficiency, the same quiet purposefulness. Like a woman who has decided that every action she takes will be deliberate and none of it will be wasted, and who has been making this decision long enough that it has become simply how she moves through the world. His mind does it again, that skip. That small, specific skip, like a finger moving across a keyboard and finding one key missing from the row, the reaching and the finding nothing. It is not unpleasant, exactly. It is unfamiliar. Kai Seo has never, in his adult life, experienced a sensation he could not immediately classify. This one declines to be classified. He breathes out slowly. He looks at the folder Danny brought. He looks back up. She still hasn't looked at him once. Her name tag is visible when she passes table 5. Lisa. He stores it. He tells himself firmly and with great conviction that this is identical to storing Marcus at the host stand and Jake behind the bar, and the names of the 12 people at the private event in the far room. Identical, automatic, no different, the same neurology, the same filing system. The same dispassionate collection of data for future utility. He is not very convincing, even to himself. She arrives at his table 2 minutes later. No hurry, no nerves. She moves with the particular ease of someone who has made every motion in their work so habitual that none of it requires conscious investment. She sets down the water glass without any tremor at all, pulls out her order pad with the ease of a woman who has done this particular motion approximately 10,000 times, and looks at him directly, not with the flicker of unease that his name tends to produce in people who have heard it said in certain tones in certain rooms, not the involuntary recalibration he usually sees in people who know what he is, the slight lean back, the careful neutralizing of expression, the decision to become more careful, not with recognition, not with performance, just with clean, professional attention, completely level, completely unhurried, like a woman who has already decided nothing about him that requires updating. Ready to order, her voice is even, low. The voice of someone who has never once needed to raise it to be heard in a room and knows it. Kai opens his mouth. He orders something. He genuinely could not tell you what later that evening, which is a problem that has no precedent in his adult life. He has near-perfect recall of every conversation, every transaction, every line of dialogue from every meeting he has attended in 11 years of doing this. He could not tell you what he ordered. She writes it down. She nods once. She walks away without a backward glance, not performing indifference, just genuinely occupied with what comes next, completely untroubled by what she left behind her at table 2. Across the table, Danny Ree is very carefully looking at his phone. Quick pause. If you're feeling this story, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find stories like this one. Now back to Lisa. Lisa Stone has rules, several of them, carefully constructed over 6 years of waiting tables in New York City at progressively better establishments, built out of experience and specific incidents she does not think about anymore because thinking about them is not useful. The rules are not written down anywhere, they don't need to be. She has internalized them the way you internalize anything that has protected you enough times, thoroughly and without ceremony. The rules are as follows. Don't bring your phone to the floor. Don't rush a table that isn't ready to be rushed. Don't carry a bad shift home. Leave it at the door of the restaurant. Shake it off on the sidewalk. Start clean in the morning. Don't talk about tables to other tables, ever, under any circumstances. And don't take anything personally that happens in a dining room, because a dining room is a stage and everyone in it is performing and none of it is about you even when it feels like it is. And above all else, do not notice the guests beyond what they need from you. Not their watches, not their cars outside, not the way certain ones hold their forks like they've been doing it since before they could reach the table, not the way others look at the room like they own it and would like the room to know, not the way they look at you. This rule is the load-bearing wall of the whole structure. Remove it and everything else becomes unstable. It is the rule that kept 6 years of waiting tables from feeling like something that needed to be survived instead of simply done. The man at table 2 is making that rule difficult. Not loudly, not in any way she could point at and name if her manager asked her to. He sits quietly, he orders simply and correctly. No modifications, no substitutions, no performance of difficulty. No behavior designed to establish that he is the kind of person accustomed to having his preferences catered to. He tips in a way that communicates clearly that he understands money as a language and has chosen fluency over volume. He is, as a guest, completely without problem. And he watches her. He is there Tuesday, he is there again Thursday. And now it is the following Monday and Lisa is clocking into the dinner shift and realizes with a small and unwelcome precision that somewhere in the back of her mind she has been aware of every day that passed since Thursday. Not thinking about him, not consciously, but aware of the days, the way you are aware of something in your peripheral vision that you have decided not to look at directly. She pushes the thought off the counter the way you'd push a glass too close to the edge, sharp, deliberate, gone. He is there. She learns his full name the way she learns most things she would rather not have learned, by accident. She overhears it from Marcus at the host stand, said in the lowered tone that staff use for things they are not supposed to say on the floor, but that have enough weight that the pressure of not saying them becomes too much. Kai Seo, 2 syllables. They land with a specific weight she can feel but can't immediately explain. Not recognition exactly, more like the quality of weight that certain words carry when the world has decided they should. She has lived in New York long enough to know what certain silences around a name are saying without saying it. The silence around this one is saying quite a lot. She doesn't ask Marcus to say more. She doesn't need to. She already knows enough to understand that knowing more would require her to do something with it, and she has not decided yet what to do. She goes to his table anyway because it is her section, and she is not the kind of woman who rearranges herself around the presence of a difficult man. She made that decision years ago, in a different restaurant in a different borough, after a specific incident she does not think about anymore because thinking about it is not useful. It had taken her a week of deliberate daily recommitment to that decision before it stuck. It has never wavered since, but he is looking at her, and not in the way men sometimes look at her, loud with it, wanting her to notice them noticing, performing interest like a monologue they're proud of and expect to be applauded for. This is something else entirely, quiet, still, deliberate. The way you look at a problem you are genuinely, carefully trying to solve and you are not certain of the method yet, but you have no intention of looking away until you find one. It should make her uncomfortable. It does make her uncomfortable. What she doesn't expect is the second feeling that moves in directly underneath that one. Smaller, quieter, far more inconvenient, curiosity. She kills it immediately. She is exceptionally good at killing inconvenient feelings, forensically good. She had developed this ability over years and several distinct occasions that had each taught her a new technique, and she applies the techniques now without hesitation. The curiosity is identified, isolated and neutralized before it can become anything that needs to be dealt with later. She takes his order. She walks away. But later, halfway through refilling the bread basket at table 11, she glances across the room without meaning to, without deciding to. Her eyes simply go there, the way your eyes go to a light when you're in the dark. He is watching her, not performing it, not announcing it, just watching, with the same focused attention you'd give a book you'd been waiting a long time to open. She looks away first. At the end of her shift, Lisa finds something tucked inside her apron pocket, a folded square of plain white paper. She doesn't remember anyone touching her apron. She can't account for the moment it was placed there, which is itself interesting, because she pays attention to her surroundings. She opens it in the staff room under the fluorescent light that makes everyone look like they haven't slept. 4 words. Handwriting that is clean and deliberate, the kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who decided what their letters would look like and never changed their mind. Not the handwriting of someone who learnt calligraphy or took penmanship seriously. Just the handwriting of someone who, in every detail, does exactly what they mean to do. You work too hard. No name, no number, no explanation, no performance. She stands in the staff room and holds it for a long moment, long enough that Priya glances at her on the way past and decides not to ask. Then she folds it exactly as she found it and tucks it into the inner zipper pocket of her bag, the pocket she uses for things she's not ready to put down. She tells herself she will throw it away when she gets home. She does not throw it away. On the walk to the subway, she takes it out and reads it under a street lamp. The November wind hits her face with the specific rudeness of New York November, which does not negotiate. The city moves around her, enormous and indifferent and loud in the particular way of a Friday night, and she stands in the middle of all of it, reading 4 words that have no business landing the way they land. She thinks for one single second she will never admit to anyone alive that tomorrow is her day off, and she almost wishes it wasn't. What she doesn't know, what she has no way of knowing, standing on that sidewalk with her coat open because she forgot to button it and the note in her hand, is that tonight at the bar on the far end of Harlow's, a man named Preston Cole sat for 45 minutes watching her work. Not watching her the way a man in a restaurant watches a server, watching her the way a man with a specific purpose watches a specific variable, watching where Kai's eyes went when she crossed his sightline, counting the seconds the pen slowed, noting the pause at the table that lasted a half-second longer than business required. He has what he needs, he just needs the right moment to use it. Kai Seo is not a man who waits. In every negotiation, every acquisition, every situation that has built the quiet and specific architecture of his influence in this city, he has been the one who moves first. He does not linger, he does not orbit, he does not sit with uncertainty and hope it resolves itself like weather. He has always been in motion, forward motion specifically, toward the outcome he has already identified. Waiting, for him, has always been a tactic, something deployed strategically in service of the move that comes after it, not something you do because you don't know what else to do. And yet here he is, 3 weeks in, sitting with uncertainty, orbiting, returning to the same restaurant for reasons that decline to be fully articulated even to himself, telling Danny the food is good and watching Danny accept this with the expressionless patience of a man who has decided to let certain things be what they are. Danny finally says something on a Wednesday evening heading downtown from a meeting in Harlem. He says it with the careful precision of someone setting a full glass down on a surface they're not sure about, testing the weight against the stability. You've been to Harlow's 5 times this month. A pause. The East River through the tinted window on Danny's side of the car, dark water catching city light, moving fast in the November cold. We don't have enough business to justify Harlow's 5 times. Kay looks out the window on his own side, the city sliding past. The food is good. Danny nods once and says nothing else for the rest of the ride. He has worked beside this man for 11 years and he knows the specific geometry of productive silence versus silence that requires more investment than it will return. This one he lets go. But the next morning, without being asked and without comment, he sets a thin folder on Kai's desk. The kind of folder that communicates by its very presence that someone has done a certain amount of work that was not requested and had reasons for doing it. Name, age, work history going back 7 years, an emergency contact in Massachusetts, and an employee photo. Head-on, direct eye contact, full eye contact, even under the harsh fluorescence of an HR department camera. Sharp, completely unafraid, the face he cannot file. Looking back at him from an HR photograph with the specific composure of someone who has decided that being looked at is something that happens to other people's comfort, not theirs. Kai looks at it for a long moment, then he slides it back across the desk. Put it away. Flat? Final. The voice he uses when something is done, when there is no remaining conversation about whatever was just addressed. Danny takes the folder without a word, because he understands, in that moment, something Kai is still in the process of arriving at on his own. The fact that he doesn't want the file isn't caution, it isn't procedure, it isn't the calculation of a man who has decided the risk isn't worth it. It is something Kai Seo has not felt in a very long time. Something he would not immediately have a name for if you asked him, which is why it took the folder on the desk for it to become visible. It is respect. And for a man who has spent 11 years in rooms where respect is something you take rather than something you give, that distinction is not nothing. That distinction, in fact, is everything. That Friday, Kai waits until Harlow's has thinned to its last few tables and the dinner shift is winding toward close. He has ordered and eaten and watched the room empty and stayed, not performing patience, just staying. When Lisa comes to clear his table, he says, without preamble, without performance, with the directness that is either his best quality or his most dangerous one, depending on how you're standing, "Would you like to sit down?" Not quite a question, not quite a demand. The sentence occupies the specific grammatical territory between the two, and the territory is deliberate. She looks at him, one long, level look, not afraid, not flattered, not performing anything at all. Just looking, the way you look when you're deciding something important and you want to actually look at it rather than at your own reaction to it. "I'm still on the clock." "I know," he says. "I'll wait." She clears the table with the same unhurried thoroughness she brings to all of it. She disappears into the back. Kai sits and he waits and he prepares himself with genuine and practiced calm for the possibility that when the kitchen lights go off, she will walk out the staff entrance without looking in his direction. He thinks about this outcome. He considers it fully. He decides, sitting there with his hands flat on the cleared white tablecloth, that he will be fine with it, that it will be the right outcome and he will accept it as such, and that will be the end of this. She comes back out in her coat. She sits down across from him. She sets her bag on the chair beside her with the clean practicality of someone who has thought about this decision and made it and is now simply executing it. "You've been watching me," she says, not an accusation, a statement of established fact that she is putting on the table between them so that neither of them has to pretend it isn't there. "Yes," he says. "Why?" He is quiet for a moment, not performing the pause. Thinking inside it the way he thinks inside everything, completely, without distraction, without performing the appearance of thought, while the actual thinking happens somewhere less visible. "You're the only person in this room I couldn't remember after I left." Something shifts in her expression, fast, small, the specific micro-shift of a face registering something it didn't expect and deciding what to do with it, and then it is controlled and gone because she is very good at that. "I know who you are," she says. "I know you do." "Then you know why this is a bad idea." "Yes," he says. She stands. She picks up her bag. He doesn't reach for her arm, doesn't push, doesn't explain further or reframe or find the better angle. She walks out and the night takes her and the door closes and she's gone. Kai finishes the last of his water. He sets the glass down carefully on the white tablecloth. He sits with the quiet of the nearly empty restaurant for a moment, the last of the staff moving around him with the invisible efficiency of people who have learned that certain tables are not to be hurried. He is smiling, just slightly, just the corner of his mouth, and just barely enough for Danny, watching from the car at the curb outside, to see it through the glass and lean back against the seat and think, with the resigned clarity of a man who has been waiting for something to become a problem for 3 weeks and has just confirmed that it is now officially a problem. We are in trouble. What neither of them sees is Preston Cole's black car idling at the far end of the block, watching the same door Lisa just walked through, making a note of the direction she turned, writing down which subway entrance she walked toward, and at what time and what she was wearing. Preston Cole is a man who plans carefully and moves slowly and never ever starts something before the pieces are in position. He has been in this business long enough to know that timing is not a detail. Timing is the entire thing. The pieces are almost in position. Okay, pause. I need to know, are you Team Lisa right now, or are you already nervous about what Preston's planning? Drop it in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Now let's keep going. Lisa takes 3 days off, not because Harlow's needs her to, because she sat across from Kai Seo on a Friday night and felt something she has no organized, manageable, safe place to put. Not the curiosity she has already killed twice. Something underneath the curiosity, quieter and more structural. The kind of feeling that doesn't respond to the techniques because it isn't making any noise. It's just there, rearranging things. And she needs the weight of her own apartment, her own routines, the smell of her own kitchen, and the view from her own window to find somewhere to put it that isn't the center of her chest. Saturday, she cleans the apartment. The whole thing, the kind of cleaning that is not really about cleanliness, but about having something to do with your hands that requires enough attention to displace the thing you're not thinking about. She does all the laundry. She rearranges 2 shelves of her bookcase, which has fallen twice in the 4 years she has lived in this apartment. Once when she was moving in too many things at once, once under circumstances she still describes as the shelf's fault, and been rebuilt twice with the stubbornness of someone who refuses to own fewer books on principle. She handles each book as she replaces it, checks its spine, There are books on this shelf she has read 4 times, and books she has not opened since she bought them, and both categories matter equally because that is how she has organized her life, by what she means to do, not only by what she has done. She calls Nadia, who lives in Astoria, and has the specific and irreplaceable quality of being excellent at listening without immediately offering solutions. This is rarer than it sounds. Most people who call themselves good listeners are actually good at finding the moment to speak. Nadia genuinely waits. She waited through everything 2 years ago, and she is waiting now, on the other end of the phone, while Lisa talks about everything that occurred in the last week and a half. Everything except Kai Seo. She is not ready to say it out loud. Saying it out loud is how things become real. Things that are real have consequences. She is not ready for the specific consequences of this particular thing being real. Sunday is easier. The apartment has been cleaned and the books have been reorganized and the laundry is done, and she has talked to Nadia for 90 minutes about nothing relevant, and all of it has helped in the specific, modest way that ordinary things help with extraordinary feelings. She makes dinner for herself. She reads. She goes to bed before midnight and actually sleeps. Monday she goes back to work. He is not there. She doesn't react. She works her section with the same thoroughness she always brings to it. She checks table 2 only because it needs resetting and not for any other reason, and she does not look at Marcus when he glances at the reservation book, because she is not curious and she has established that already. Wednesday, he is not there. Thursday, she almost asks. The question is entirely formed and on its way to her mouth before she stops it. She goes home and reads 40 pages of a novel she is not fully absorbing, which tells her something about the state of her concentration that she files without examining. Friday at 6:22 in the evening, the door opens. Kai walks in alone. No Danny, no folder, no purpose that is obvious to anyone watching. He sits down and opens the menu he does not need, which is the first time she has seen him open the menu at all, and does not look toward her section. He holds the menu up and reads it the way you read something when you want people to think you are reading something. She waits until 7. Then she goes to his table. She has thought on the way over about exactly how to approach this. She has decided on simple, direct, exactly as she would approach any other table that had been absent for a week. You weren't here this week, she says, completely neutral, completely even. A statement, not a question. He looks up from the menu he has been reading with great and unconvincing interest. No, I wasn't. She takes his order. She walks away. At the service bar, she catches her reflection in the dark window behind the bottles. The woman looking back at her is holding a notepad and has the expression of a person who has just said something they told themselves they wouldn't say and is evaluating what that means. She looks at herself for 1 second. Just one. Then she looks away. He is patient in a way she wasn't prepared for. She had built a version of this in her head, a version where he pushed, sent something through a mutual contact, appeared at a coffee shop near her apartment, because a man like him would know which coffee shop she used on Saturday mornings. A version in which the pressure escalated because men like him, in her experience, escalate. Instead, he disappeared for a week. He came back, ordered halibut and a glass of still water, and gave her space without being asked to give her space, without making any kind of gesture toward the fact that he was giving it. No pointed absence, no meaningful look when she arrived at his table. Just a man having dinner, alone, treating her section the way he had always treated it, with a clean, uncomplicated courtesy that asked nothing back. She doesn't know what to do with that. She has a specific and well-maintained framework for handling men who push. She does not have an equivalent framework for a man who simply stops and waits at a reasonable distance and makes no demands while he does it. In her experience, space is something women claim for themselves with significant effort and occasional conflict. It is not something men offer freely, without credit, without the implicit expectation that the offering will be acknowledged and rewarded. It unsettles her in a way the watching never did. The watching she had a category for. This she doesn't. When she brings his check, he signs it and leaves without prolonging the moment. No additional eye contact. No lingering. She clears the table. There is no note this time. She almost expects nothing. She tells herself firmly that she expects nothing, but in the fold of the tablecloth, small enough that she only finds it because her hands are thorough, she has always been thorough. It was what got her the private room at Harlow's, and what kept her there is a single pressed flower. Small, pale, dried, the kind that gets pressed between the pages of a book someone was reading on a day they decided they wanted to hold on to, kept there long enough to flatten and dry and lose its color to a pale translucent near white. No message, no name, No context. She holds it in her palm for a long moment, there by the cleared table with the white cloth, the candle just extinguished, the faint smell of it still in the air. Then she puts it in her apron pocket and finishes her shift. On her way home, walking the 4 blocks to the train, she takes it out under a street lamp and holds it up to look at it in the amber light. It is exactly what it looks like, a flower, pressed, dried, pale. Her grandmother in Massachusetts used to press flowers exactly like this one. Kept them in a journal on the kitchen shelf, the pages swollen slightly with the thickness of all the things pressed inside. Lavender, mostly, from the garden that ran along the south wall of her house. Occasionally something else, something smaller, something Lisa couldn't always identify. Her grandmother had never explained the practice. It had simply existed, the way certain habits of certain people exist, present, consistent, unremarked on, and more defining than anything they ever said directly. It was such a specific, private, unremarkable detail from such a specific, private chapter of her childhood that the probability of this being accidental is essentially zero. And it is also, she thinks, standing on a cold November sidewalk in Manhattan with a pressed flower in her hand and the street lamp turning everything amber around her, completely impossible. Because she has never said a word about her grandmother to anyone at Harlow's. Not to Marcus, not to Priya, not in any conversation she has had in the 5 months she has worked in this building. It is not a secret, it is simply the kind of thing you don't say in a room full of wealthy people's dinners. She is in trouble. She knows it the way you know a storm before the sky changes. Not by evidence, by the specific quality of the air and the way your body responds to it before your mind has processed why. Not dangerous trouble, she thinks. The worst kind. She does not throw the flower away. In the morning, she wakes early. The light through the window is thin and pale, and the city outside is doing its early morning thing. Quieter than it will be in 2 hours, but not quiet. She makes coffee, stands at her kitchen window watching the street below, the few people moving through it, with the purposeful unhurried pace of people who have somewhere to be but not yet. She picks up her phone, sets it back down, refills her cup, though it is not empty. She thinks about the note in the apron pocket, which is in the inner zipper pocket of her bag, the pressed flower, which is in the same pocket now, the way he answered on 2 rings. The bench, but wait, she's getting ahead of herself. That comes later. She picks up her phone again. She looks at it for a moment. She dials. It rings twice. Kai answers on the 2nd ring. He always waits for 3. Always. It is the specific and deliberate habit of a man who has decided that eagerness is a liability and patience is power. He had made this decision in his late 20s after a specific incident that had taught him what the shape of his voice communicated before he spoke, and how the length of a pause could shift the terms of a conversation before it had technically begun. He has waited for 3 rings for 11 years without exception. He answers on 2. It's Lisa. A pause, the specific kind of pause that means something is being held very carefully on the other end. I don't know how you knew which flower, she says. My grandmother used to press those in her kitchen in Massachusetts, the exact same ones, in a journal on her shelf. He is already standing, already at the window of his penthouse, the city below him grey and cold and indifferent in the early morning. He had been awake. He had been awake for a while. I didn't know that, he says. I know you didn't. Her voice is quiet, steady, the voice of someone who has found the footing they needed. That's why I'm calling. Sunday arrives the way good things arrive, quietly, without announcing itself, without the weight of anticipation that usually makes the thing itself smaller than the waiting. He is outside her building at 8:15, wearing a coat instead of a suit, a dark wool coat that is expensive but not conspicuously so, the kind of expensive that is about quality rather than display. No, Danny, the car parked at the curb is a car, not a statement. She had half expected the black-tinted thing. This is deliberate. She can see that it's deliberate and she respects that it is. The choice communicates something he did not say, that this morning is different from every other morning that has preceded it in his life, and he has chosen to dress accordingly. She comes down at 8:22, warm clothes, simple, hair down, clear eyes that take in the car, then him, without explaining what they're thinking about either. Something happens at the corner of her mouth, small. Involuntary, she controls it within a second, which is exactly 1 second longer than she would have liked. They go to Central Park, November. The trees are stripped bare, and the paths are thin with early walkers and dog owners, and the occasional jogger who has not yet accepted that it is too cold for this, and will not accept it until the cold becomes genuinely unkind. There is something honest about bare trees. No performance, no prettiness designed to attract attention, Just the actual structure of the thing, visible for once, all the way to its edges. It suits them both better than flowers would have. They walk without rushing, they talk, not carefully, not with the managed quality of two people trying to present the best version of themselves to each other, just talking the way people talk when they've stopped performing ease and started, without entirely meaning to, being present. He finds out about Massachusetts, about the grandmother's kitchen with its dried flowers and its specific smell, thyme and old wood, and something sweet she still can't name when she thinks about it, about the bookshelf that has fallen twice and been rebuilt with the stubbornness of someone who believes that more books is always the right answer to any question. She finds out he has a sister in California he calls every Sunday, without exception, wherever in the world he happens to be. That he cannot cook a single thing except rice, which he makes exceptionally well as a result of it being the one thing he has ever needed to learn. That he learned English from American action films at age 13, not because anyone told him to, but because he had decided at 13 that English was useful and this was the most available method, and still occasionally thinks in the rhythms of dialogue he memorized then. Certain phrases arrive to him in the cadence of movies rather than ordinary speech, and sometimes this is funny and sometimes it is unexpectedly beautiful, and he has never been entirely sure which it is. He makes her laugh, twice. The first time she looks away immediately by reflex. The second time, she doesn't. He doesn't push, he doesn't perform, he is simply there, present in a way she had not anticipated, in a way that was not part of the version she had built in her head during those 3 days at home with the reorganized bookshelf. The version in her head had been harder around the edges and more strategic in its warmth. This is neither. They sit on a bench near the east path, watching the park do what the park does. The city noise reduced to background hum, pigeons landing and reconsidering their commitment to any particular piece of pavement, a dog determinedly chasing a squirrel who is clearly not worried and is leading the dog on a tour of the path's perimeter for its own reasons. After a while, Lisa says quietly, "You're not what I thought you were." He looks forward at the path, a beat. "What did you think I was?" "Dangerous." He is quiet for a moment. Then, "I am dangerous." "I know." She looks at him. "That's not what I meant." He looks back at her, and in the space between them, on a bench in November in a city that cares nothing for any of it, something settles. Not a beginning exactly, not an ending. Something still in the process of becoming, on its way to something it hasn't been named yet. He drives her home at noon, walks her to the door of her building. She turns at the top of the steps and looks at him from the slightly elevated position, her eyes level with his for once. This woman looking across at a man the rest of the city looks up to. "Same time next Sunday," she says. He nods once. She goes inside. He stands on the sidewalk for a long moment. The city moves around him with its usual total indifference to individual human experience. He is a man who has held the city at arm's length for the entirety of his adult life, who has made peace with the specific cost of that, who has understood that the cost was correct, who has never once in 11 years revisited the decision. He is standing on a sidewalk in November, feeling for the first time in a long time exactly like someone who has just been handed something he didn't know was missing and doesn't yet have a system for. He gets in the car. He doesn't see the black sedan at the far end of the block. He doesn't see the figure inside it, lower a phone after taking the last photograph. He doesn't see Preston Cole's expression, not angry, not anxious, not threatened. Something colder than all three, satisfied. The way a man looks when a plan that has been patient in the dark finally has its first piece. Preston makes one call on the drive back downtown. 4 words, calm, final, find out who she is. He already knows who she is. What he wants to know is what she would do if she believed Kai Seo had already decided she was a liability. He has a hypothesis, he needs to test it. He has always found that the most elegant way to break something is from the inside, using materials the thing itself provided. We are at the part of the story that broke me when I wrote it. Before we go here, subscribe if you haven't. Share this with someone who needs a story today, and comment what you think is about to happen, because I want to know if you saw it coming. Lisa is on the Tuesday morning shift, a quiet, slow, coffee and late brunch crowd. The kind of shift that allows for the particular rhythm of good service without the adrenaline of a full Friday dinner. When her phone buzzes in the pocket she's not supposed to have her phone in, she glances at the screen. Nadia, 3 words, no punctuation, come home now. She doesn't hesitate. She asks her manager to cover the last 35 minutes. Personal emergency. She doesn't explain, and her manager, who has worked in this industry long enough to know that when someone with Lisa Stone's track record says personal emergency, they mean it, tells her to go. She takes the train to Astoria. She finds Nadia in the kitchen of her second-floor apartment on a block where the buildings are close enough together that you can hear your neighbor's music when the windows are open, hands wrapped around a coffee mug that has gone cold at some point and stayed cold because she forgot it was there. Eyes that have been crying and are done crying and have moved somewhere past crying into something steadier and harder and worse than crying. The specific quality of aftermath. What happened? Lisa says. 2 men came this morning. Nadia's voice is careful, measured. She has been rehearsing how to say this, not performing it, preparing it, making sure she gets it right. Expensive suits. One stood at the door. One sat down at my kitchen table without being asked. A pause in which the weight of that detail, the sitting down without being asked, lands fully. They knew my name, my work schedule, they knew what train I take in the morning and how many blocks I walk alone. The kitchen is very quiet. Nadia slides an envelope across the table. Lisa opens it with both hands that are completely steady, because she is a woman who is very good at keeping her hands steady when her body wants to do something else entirely. She had learned this years ago, and it had held. Inside, 2 photographs. The first is Kai's car parked outside her building, timestamped 2 days ago, when she had not known anyone was watching, when she had been inside reorganizing her thoughts the way she reorganized her bookshelf, believing herself private. The second is the pressed flower, photographed on what is unmistakably a polished desk. Beside it, 1 printed line, flagged, removed from proximity. Below that, a signature block, clean, deliberate, unmistakably his. She has watched him sign his check every week for a month. She would recognize those specific, particular strokes anywhere, the specific angle of the first letter, the way the signature closed. She reads it 3 times, then she sets it on the table and puts both palms flat on the surface. The way you set something down when you are afraid of what your hands might do next. Nadia looks at her. She finds it very hard to read Lisa's face right now, and she has known Lisa for 4 years, which means she knows it is deliberately unreadable and is not going to become readable until Lisa decides it should be. There was a message, Nadia says. He said it slowly so I'd remember it exactly. She opens her phone and shows Lisa the voice memo she recorded because she was too afraid to trust her memory with something this specific. Lisa listens. The man's voice is even, professional. The voice of someone delivering a business communication who has delivered many business communications before this one and has developed an efficient, frictionless method for doing it. If you value her safety, you stop. You leave the restaurant. You don't contact him. No explanation. No confrontation. You disappear. If he comes looking, your silence protects you both. If you push, the next visit won't be a conversation. Lisa sits in Nadia's kitchen for a very long time. Long enough that the light through the window shifts slightly. Nadia makes fresh coffee and sets a cup in front of her and says nothing because she understands the particular kind of silence this is. She thinks about the note in her apron pocket, the pressed flower, the 2 rings, the Sunday in Central Park and the bare honest trees and the second laugh she didn't look away from. She thinks about her grandmother's kitchen in Massachusetts and the journal on the shelf. She thinks about Nadia taking the train alone at 7:15 every single morning, walking 4 blocks before she reaches her building. 4 blocks, the same 4 blocks she has walked for 2 years. She picks up her phone. She does not call Kai. She calls Marcus at Harlow's and says she needs to take a leave of absence. Personal reasons. She is sorry for the short notice. Marcus, who has worked in hospitality long enough to hear everything that people are not saying, tells her to take care of herself and that her section will be here when she is ready. She is not planning on being ready. She is planning on putting 400 miles between herself and everything that has happened in the last month and staying there until the feeling becomes a fact she can live with instead of something that keeps reaching for her in the middle of the night. She goes back to her apartment on the Upper West Side. She packs for a week. She looks around the apartment, the clean surfaces, the reorganized bookshelf, and then she continues packing and it becomes clear she is packing for more than a week. She looks at the bookshelf. It has never looked so heavy standing there across the room, like it is the only thing in the apartment that has any weight, like everything else has already left. She texts Kai 3 words. She is a woman who has always known exactly what she needs to say, and right now 3 words is what she has. I'm sorry, goodbye. Then she blocks his number and sits in the middle of her apartment in her coat, fully packed bag at her feet, listening to the city outside. Feeling the warmth leave the room the way warmth does. Not all at once, not dramatically, just gradually, until you notice you're cold and you can't identify the exact moment it changed. The bookshelf stands across from her. She does not look at it again. Friday night, 7:30. Kaiso walks into Harlow's. Same table, same seat, back to the wall, sightlines clear to both exits, the force of habit that has kept him alive when other men with similar habits stopped paying attention long enough for attention to matter. He orders water. He waits. 15 minutes pass. The section that is Lisa's section is being covered tonight by someone he doesn't recognize, a man, mid-20s, moving through the tables with competent efficiency. Kai flags Marcus at the host stand with the particular contained directness he applies to everything. His voice when he speaks is the way he keeps everything level, not revealing a single degree of what he is actually feeling. The server who usually works this section, Marcus glances at him with the carefully neutral expression of a hospitality professional managing the distance between what he knows and what he's been paid to maintain discretion about. Lisa, she took a leave, Tuesday, personal reasons. Kai thanks him. He pays for the water he hasn't touched. He leaves. In the car, Danny says nothing. He doesn't need to. He has already picked up his phone and is running the search before Kai has spoken a word, because Danny has been watching this develop for 3 weeks and the math is not complicated. Her apartment, dark. Her phone, blocked from his number. Her last message to him sitting in his phone like a door being closed very quietly from the other side, with very great care, in the specific way that people close doors when they are afraid of what might happen if they make noise. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Kai sits in the back of the car on the corner of Hudson and Canal and thinks about a woman who told him she was not afraid of him and then disappeared without a word. He thinks about the pressed flower, which he hadn't known would land the way it did, because he hadn't known about the grandmother or the journal, had chosen it for reasons he couldn't fully articulate even to himself, which should have told him something. It landed like something that was always meant to go there. He is not angry, he is something quieter than angry, something that takes up more room, something that does not resolve the way anger resolves. It doesn't build toward an action, doesn't point toward a solution. It is just there, solid and quiet and taking up space. Find out what happened, he says to Danny. Not her file, not her history. What happened between Sunday and Tuesday? Someone reached her, someone who knew enough and had enough weight to make her run. He pauses. The only people who knew about her were in Harlow's or in this car. Danny finds the answer before midnight. He brings it to the penthouse at 12:53 and sets a folder on the glass table. Kai opens it. Inside is the assembled forgery. His signature, lifted from a business document with surgical precision, the kind of precision that requires access, time, and specific knowledge of which document to pull from, and placed beneath language he never wrote, never thought, would never use. The surveillance photograph of Lisa's building, taken not by anyone in his operation, but by Preston's men, whose faces Danny has now identified from security footage on 3 different blocks. The printed words, flagged, removed from proximity, language designed to sound like him. Language designed to be convincing to someone who had only known him for a month and had a specific and reasonable fear of what he might be capable of. He reads it once. He closes the folder. The room is very quiet for a long time. Quiet enough that the city sounds from 40 floors below are audible through the glass. Traffic, a distant horn, the baseline hum of millions of people doing their ordinary evening things. Danny stands by the window and waits. He has worked beside Kai Seo for 11 years. He knows the silence that precedes a decision. He knows the silence that precedes the implementation of a decision already made. He knows the silence that is simply processing. This is none of those. This is something he has not heard before. Something older and quieter and not about next steps. Where is Preston? Kai says. His voice is perfectly even, the voice he uses for things that have already been decided at a level beneath the deciding. Boston. He flew back yesterday morning. Bring him here. A pause. Not tonight. The words sit between them unspoken, obvious to both. Some things are better handled in daylight, with full information, without the specific quality of decision that comes from a night like this one. Tomorrow, Danny nods and goes. The door closes with a soft, careful click. Kai stands at the window for a long time after. Below him, Manhattan does what it always does. Indifferent, enormous, loud. He has held this city at arm's length for a very long time and understood exactly what it costs to hold it that way. The things you don't get to have, the specific quality of life you don't get to live. He has always considered the cost correct. He has never once revisited the calculation. He picks up his phone. Her number is blocked from his line, but he has other lines, numbers she has never seen, clean numbers that exist for specific and various purposes. He opens one, types, "This is Kai. I know what happened. I know what you were shown and who showed it to you. None of it was real. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking for one call, just to tell you the truth. That's all." He sets the phone on the glass table. The city moves below. It does not care. It never does. He waits anyway. Lisa is in her mother's house in Hartford, her childhood bedroom. The same curtains from high school, pale blue, a little faded at the edges from years of morning light. The same narrow bed, a radiator that clicks all night with a friendly, irregular rhythm that she had forgotten she missed. A window that looks out over a street so quiet it feels like a completely different country from Manhattan. The same country in every legal sense, but different in the way that matters, the way that has to do with how much the world asks of you at any given moment. She has been here 4 days. She has not cried. She is both proud of this and quietly aware that not crying is not the same as being okay and that she would benefit from not conflating the two. She sees the message at 1:58 in the morning. She is in the kitchen because sleep has not been coming easily, and the kitchen in this house has always been the room she goes to when sleep declines to cooperate. There is something about the particular quality of quiet in a family kitchen at 2 in the morning, the refrigerator hum, the familiar arrangement of familiar things, the specific light from the refrigerator door when you open it looking for nothing in particular. She is standing in socks on the linoleum floor, with the refrigerator casting everything in pale blue when she reads the message. She reads it twice. She puts the phone face down on the counter. She fills a glass of water and drinks the whole thing standing at the sink, looking out at the dark backyard and the bare November trees. They look exactly like the ones in Central Park. They have the same shape bare trees have. She is briefly furious at trees for this. It is the most irrational thing she has felt in 4 days, and it is the closest she has come to crying. She picks up the phone, she calls the number, he answers before the first ring is finished. "I know what Preston showed you." No greeting, no preamble. Just the truth, arriving exactly the way he has always arrived, without decoration, without the performance of an entrance. "The signature was mine, the document was not. He pulled my signature from a legal filing. The surveillance photo was his men, not mine. I have never had you followed. I have never used that word about you. I never will." Lisa stands in her mother's kitchen and says nothing. She is listening. She is good at listening when the information is important. "Your friend Nadia is safe," he says. "Preston's men will not go near her again. That has already been handled." A pause, the kind that has a specific weight, the weight of something that was real and is now resolved in a way that will not be detailed and does not need to be. She has lived in New York for 6 years. She understands. "I'm not calling to ask you to come back," he says. "I'm calling because you deserve to know the truth and you were given a lie instead." She exhales, not a sigh. Something longer and lower and more fundamental, the release of something she has been holding in her chest since Tuesday that she hadn't fully noticed she was holding until this moment when it starts to go. Why would he do that? Her voice is steady. She is very good at steady. "Because I was paying attention to something other than his problem," Kai says. "He has been losing ground in a territory dispute for 6 months, and he needed my attention on that. When my attention moved, he moved to take what he thought I'd left unguarded. A pause that holds more than what's in it. He was wrong about what I'd left unguarded." The refrigerator hums. The radiator ticks somewhere down the hall. Outside, Hartford is completely silent, the specific silence of a residential street at 2 in the morning. The kind of silence Manhattan does not produce at any hour. "I'm in Connecticut," she says. She doesn't know why she says it. It is not information she intended to offer. "I know," he says. She exhales again. It is almost a laugh. "You said you never had me followed." "I didn't have to," he says. "You told me your mother's house was in Hartford. 3 weeks ago, I remembered." "Of course he did." She looks out the window at the bare trees. "What did you do with him?" "He is no longer a concern." She doesn't ask what that means. She is a woman who has lived in New York for 6 years and she understands with great clarity exactly what that means. "I threw the flower away," she says. "It is not true." The flower is in the pocket of the coat she brought from Manhattan, in the small zipper pocket where she has been keeping things she isn't ready to look at directly, but also cannot bring herself to leave behind. It has been there since she packed. She has touched the pocket several times without opening it. She is aware of this fact and has not yet decided what to do with it, but she needs to say something that costs her something right now, because the alternative is crying in her mother's kitchen at 2 a.m. and she has made it 4 days without crying, and she is not starting now. I know you didn't, he says. The silence that follows is not empty. I'll be back Sunday, she says. He says nothing, but she can hear him breathing, and in the quiet of that breath, in the particular quality of it, held carefully, not released, she can hear what he isn't saying, and it is enough. We are so close to the end, and I need you to stay right here with me. If this story found you tonight, share it. That's all I'm asking. Share it with one person who needs a story like this. Okay, let's finish it. Sunday arrives exactly the way it arrived the first time. Quietly, without announcing itself. But this Sunday, Lisa takes the train from Hartford alone. She watches Connecticut blur into the Bronx, blur into Manhattan through the window, the familiar shift from quiet to density to the specific overwhelming particular aliveness of the city when you come at it from outside. Her coat is folded in her lap. The flower is still in the pocket of it, where it has been all week. She is not thinking about it consciously, it is simply there. She doesn't tell him she's coming. She buys a coffee at Grand Central and sits with it at a small table in the main hall, in the enormous cathedral-ceilinged space where the morning light comes through the upper windows at an angle that doesn't exist anywhere else in the city. Specific, golden, falling across the concourse in shafts that make the space look like it was built to hold something that cannot be measured. She sits there for 20 minutes, watching people move through the space with their luggage and their purposes. People arriving and people departing, and people in the middle of traveling who don't yet know which they are. She drinks her coffee. She thinks about what she is doing and why she is doing it, and then she goes. She doesn't go to Harlow's, she goes to his building. The address she found in approximately 11 seconds, because she is a woman who, when she decides to do something, does it completely and without half measures. She had not let herself look for it until this morning. This morning she had looked, and there it was, and here she is. The doorman calls up. She waits in the lobby with her coffee and her coat and the expression of a woman who has made a decision and is genuinely done examining it. Not suppressing doubt, she has done her examining. It is complete. He comes down. He is not wearing a suit. A dark pullover, the kind of thing you wear when you're at home and not expecting to be seen by anyone. His hair is not in its usual deliberate order. He looks, for the first time since she has known him, exactly his age. Not powerful, not controlled, not the version of himself that the city knows and keeps a certain careful distance from. Just present. Standing in the lobby of his own building, looking at her the way he has always looked at her from the first time her section was his table, like something he is genuinely, carefully trying to understand. Like she is the only problem he has ever encountered, that he approaches from a position of complete willingness to be wrong about his initial assumptions. I didn't throw the flower away, she says. I know, he says. I want to be clear about something. She sets her coffee down on the lobby table and turns to face him fully, squarely, the way she has done everything in her life that mattered enough to look it directly. I'm not here because you fixed it. I'm not here because Preston is handled or because Nadia is safe, even though both of those things matter more than I can explain right now. That's not nothing. I want you to know it's not nothing. He listens, completely. The way he always listens, as if listening were an action, not a pause between actions. I'm here because I spent 4 days in Hartford telling myself this was over, and every single morning I woke up and it wasn't over, and I am too tired and too honest to pretend otherwise. He is quiet, holding the weight of what she just said the way you hold something valuable, with attention, without pressure. I need you to tell me the truth, she says. Not what this could become, not what you think I want to hear, what it actually is right now to you. He looks at her for a long moment. Then he says it the way he says everything important, without decoration, without distance, without the armor that he wears in every other room he has ever stood in. You are the only person I've met in 11 years who made me slow down. He says it with the simplicity of something that has been true for a while and is only now being said for the first time. You are the only face I've ever failed to file. I tried. Every time I sat at that table, I tried to make you ordinary. I needed you to be ordinary. I needed you to be something I could process and put away and not come back to, and I couldn't do it. He doesn't look away. That's what it is. Lisa looks at him. She thinks about the bench and the bare trees and the second laugh she didn't look away from. She thinks about the phone answered on 2 rings and the pressed flower in her coat pocket and a man standing in a lobby in November telling the truth without a single layer of protection around it, not because the protection is gone, but because he made the choice to leave it at the door. Okay, she says. She picks up her coffee. She looks at the elevator. She looks back at him. Are you going to invite me upstairs? She says, or are we going to have our second conversation in your lobby? He almost smiles, just slightly, just enough. That corner of his mouth that she has been quietly watching since the first time he sat in her section and she told herself she wasn't watching it. They take the elevator up. Outside, Manhattan moves the way it always has, indifferent, enormous, relentlessly loud. It does not care about a woman with a pressed flower in her coat pocket who tells the truth even when it costs her. It does not care about a man who answers the phone on 2 rings and has waited his whole adult life to want something more than he wants control. It never did. But some things do not need the city to care. Some things only need 2 people in the same room at the same time, finally saying the true thing, finally choosing to stay. The elevator doors close, the lobby is empty, the flower is in her pocket, and somewhere across the city, in a building he will never set foot in again, Preston Cole's office sits dark and quiet and closed. Some plans that take a long time to build come apart very quickly. Some things are worth the waiting. If it stayed with you, if there was a moment that hit different, a line that landed somewhere it wasn't supposed to land, I want to know which one. Drop it in the comments. I'm not just saying that. I read them. I save the ones that surprise me. Tell me which moment broke you first. Was it the note in the apron pocket? The pressed flower she said she threw away but didn't? The phone answered on 2 rings? Or was it the lobby, that last scene, 2 people finally saying the true thing out loud? Tell me. And now I need you to decide something. Because this story has people in it who aren't finished. There's Nadia, in her Astoria apartment, who watched all of this happen from a certain distance, who sat at her kitchen table with cold coffee and 2 men who knew her train schedule, and who handled it with a kind of composure that tells me there is a story underneath that one nobody has heard yet. That composure didn't come from nowhere. It came from somewhere specific, and it has a history and I want to know what it is. Or, we go back. Before the restaurant, before the first Sunday, before the note in the apron pocket, we find out exactly what Preston Cole was really afraid of losing, and who he was afraid of losing it to, and what he did in the months before that first photograph was taken. Because Preston had been watching for a long time before that first night in Harlow's, and men who watch that carefully don't do it without a reason that started somewhere. You decide. Leave your vote in the comments. I'll go wherever you send me. If this is your first time here, subscribe, turn on notifications, because the next story is already waiting. And when it finds you, I hope it finds you exactly when you need it. I'll be here.